The paramedic's hand was cold when he pressed 2 fingers against my wrist. I remember staring at the ceiling of the ambulance and thinking that the light fixture above me was the same yellowish white as the kitchen tiles my husband Raymond had picked out 30 years ago. Strange. The things your mind reaches for when your body is failing you. "Ma'am, can you tell me your name?" "Margaret," I said. "Margaret Elaine Hooper." "And your date of birth?" "April 14th, 1956. He nodded, wrote something down, and told me I was going to be fine. I wasn't sure I believed him. My left hip felt like someone had pressed a hot iron straight through to the bone, and every time the ambulance moved over a bump in the road, I had to press my lips together to keep from making a sound I didn't want to make. It was a Tuesday morning in October. I had been carrying a laundry basket down the stairs, the same stairs I had walked down 10,000 times in the 31 years I had lived in that house. The basket was full. I was wearing socks. The second step from the bottom had always had a slight lip to it, and Raymond had always meant to fix it. And then Raymond was gone, and I always meant to fix it. And then I was on the floor of the hallway with the laundry spread around me like a strange garden, and the pain in my hip was so sudden and so complete that for a moment I couldn't breathe at all. I lay there for what I think was about 4 minutes before I was able to pull my phone from my pocket. I called my daughter first. That is the thing I want you to understand. She was the first person I called. It rang 4 times. Then her voicemail. Her voice was bright and cheerful. The voice she used for people she was trying to impress. "You've reached Claire. Leave me a message and I'll get back to you soon." I left a message. I kept my voice steady. I said I had fallen and I thought something might be broken and I was going to call for help, but I wanted her to know. Then I called 911. Claire called back 47 minutes later, while I was already in the emergency room, and a young doctor with tired eyes was telling me that I had a fractured hip and that I would need surgery and that I would be in the hospital for at least a week, possibly more. "Mom." Her voice had that particular flatness it got when she was inconvenienced. "I'm so sorry, but I have to tell you something. Patrick and I are in the Caribbean. We're on the cruise, our 10th anniversary trip, remember? We've been talking about this for a year." I did remember. I had even helped her pick out the dress she wore for the formal dinner night. "I know," I said. "We sail again tomorrow morning and there's no Wi-Fi until Nassau. I'm so sorry, Mom. I really am. But you said it yourself. It's a fracture, not like a heart attack or anything. The doctors are there with you, right? You're in good hands." I looked at the curtain around my bed. It was pale blue with small white diamonds printed on it. Someone had written a room number on the edge of it in black marker. "I'm in good hands," I said. "I'll call you as soon as we dock. I promise. And I'll look at flights for when we get back. Patrick's work thing starts Thursday, so it might be the weekend before I can." "Claire." "Yeah? It's okay. Go enjoy your anniversary." There was a pause that lasted just a moment too long. "You sure?" "I'm sure. She said she loved me. I said I loved her too." I set the phone down on the thin hospital blanket and looked at the ceiling and did not cry, because I had learned a long time ago that crying in hospital beds accomplishes nothing except making your face hurt. The surgery was the next morning. It took 2.5 hours. I was alone when they wheeled me in, and I was alone when I woke up in recovery with a nurse named Terrence patting my hand and telling me everything had gone beautifully. He had a kind face and I was grateful for it, even though he was a stranger. Especially because he was a stranger. My neighbor Donna came the second day. She brought me a plant, a small succulent in an orange pot, because she knew I always killed flowers. She sat in the chair beside my bed for 3 hours and talked about the neighborhood and her grandchildren and the new family that had moved in on the corner, and she didn't once ask me why my daughter wasn't there, and I loved her for that specific kindness more than I can say. My granddaughter Sophie came on the 4th day. She was 16, and she had taken 2 buses from her mother's house, her father, Patrick's house, Claire's house, and walked 6 blocks from the bus stop, and she appeared in my doorway with a brown paper bag and her hair in a messy braid and her coat buttoned wrong. "Grammy." She crossed the room in about 3 steps and put her arms around me very carefully, the way she had learned to do with sick people, gently, as though she understood that some parts of me were fragile right now. "How did you get here?" I asked. "Bus. Does your mother know you're here?" She set the paper bag on the tray table and started unpacking it. A paperback novel she thought I'd like. a small bag of the salted almonds I always kept in my kitchen drawer, hand lotion in a scent I liked, a photograph in a little frame of the two of us at her 8th grade graduation. She's on a boat, Grammy. She doesn't know much of anything right now. I looked at the photograph. I was wearing my blue cardigan, and Sophie had on the white dress, and she was grinning, and I was grinning, and we were squinting into the sun. "You didn't have to come," I said. "Yes, I did." She sat down in the chair and opened her own paperback. "I'm going to sit here until visiting hours end. Don't argue." I didn't argue. She came back on the 6th day too. She brought more almonds. She read her book and I read mine, and we didn't talk much, and it was the most comfortable I had felt since before the fall. Claire called from Nassau on day 5. The connection was patchy, and she kept breaking up. She said she was so worried. She had been thinking about me constantly. They had tried to get a signal sooner, but the boat, the middle of the ocean. She said she would look at flights the moment she landed back in Tampa. She asked how the surgery had gone, and I told her fine. Everything had gone fine. She asked if I needed anything. I thought about that question for a moment. Lying in a hospital bed with my hip held together with hardware that would set off metal detectors for the rest of my life, I thought about what I needed. "I'm okay," I said. "Really? I'll see you so soon, Mom. I promise." She didn't come when they discharged me. I hadn't expected her to. My neighbor Donna drove me home from the hospital on a Thursday afternoon, helped me up the front steps, made me a cup of tea, and stayed until she was satisfied that I could manage on my own. She had already stocked my refrigerator. There was a casserole dish on the counter with a post-it note that said 350 degrees, 40 minutes. Donna had neat handwriting, round and careful. The house felt different when I came home. It always does. After something has happened to you in the world outside it, the house doesn't know. The house is the same light coming through the same windows at the same angle, the same smell of old wood and the lavender sachets I kept in the linen closet. But you are not the same person who left, and so the house feels like a place you are visiting rather than a place you live. I stood in the doorway of the living room for a long time. I had lived in this house for 31 years. Raymond and I had bought it when Claire was 11, when the neighborhood was still a little rough around the edges, and the price reflected that. We had painted every room ourselves. We had refinished the floors. We had planted the rose bushes along the back fence that were, against all expectations, still alive and producing flowers every June, as though they had made a promise and intended to keep it. I sat down carefully in my armchair, the one Raymond used to call your throne, and I ate Donna's casserole for dinner, and I watched the evening news, and I went to bed. Claire came on Saturday. It was 12 days after the fall. She arrived with Patrick and a grocery bag full of things I didn't need: expensive crackers, 3 kinds of juice, a giant get well card that she said was from both of them, and that Patrick signed without a personalized message, just his name. She was wearing a new dress I hadn't seen before, something she had probably bought on the trip, with a pattern that suggested somewhere warm and bright. She hugged me at the door. She smelled like sunscreen, still, beneath whatever perfume she had on. We sat at the kitchen table, and she poured us both some of the juice she had brought, and Patrick stood at the counter, checking his phone, and Claire talked for 20 minutes about the cruise, the excursions they had taken, the food, the formal dinner, a couple they had met from Ohio who were funny and interesting, a sunset off the coast of some island or another that she said she would remember for the rest of her life. I listened. I drank the juice. I watched her face while she talked, and I thought about all the years I had looked at that face in the delivery room, when she was first placed in my arms, and her face was red and furious and the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. At her first day of kindergarten, when she had cried and I had not, though I had wanted to. At her wedding, when she had looked at Patrick across the space between them with an expression so certain and so open that I had thought, "She has found her person. She will be all right." I wondered when the distance had started. I couldn't trace it to a single moment. These things don't work that way. They accumulate, quietly, in the spaces between phone calls not made and visits postponed and little comments that land wrong and are never quite addressed. "Mom." Claire set down her glass. "I want to talk to you about something." Patrick looked up from his phone with slightly more interest than he had shown in any other part of the conversation. "Patrick and I have been thinking," she said, "about the house." I waited. "We know you've been thinking about what happens, long term. And we just want you to know that we've talked about it. And whenever the time comes, we'd want to keep it in the family, not sell to strangers. Patrick thinks the market is strong right now, Patrick said, setting his phone face down on the counter with the careful deliberateness of a man trying to look engaged. Right. So we just wanted to say that we're thinking about it too. We want to be involved in whatever decisions you make, about the house, and everything. I looked at my daughter. I looked at the face I had known for 42 years. I thought about the hospital bed and the pale blue curtain and the phone ringing 4 times before it went to voicemail. That's very thoughtful, I said. She smiled. The tension in her shoulders released slightly. Now, I said, would anyone like more juice? They left 2 hours later. Claire hugged me at the door again and said she would call soon and that she was going to look into home health aides for while I was recovering and that she'd come back next weekend. Patrick nodded at me from the driveway in the particular way men nod when they are relieved that something is over. I stood at the front window and watched their car pull away. Then I went to my armchair and I sat down and I was quiet for a very long time. There is a moment when you are 68 years old and you have raised a child and buried a husband and built a life from the materials available to you, when things become very clear. It is not a dramatic clarity. It arrives quietly, like the light changing in late afternoon, and once you have seen it, you cannot unsee it. I understood, sitting in that chair, that Claire had not come because she was worried about me. She had come because she was worried about the house. I understood that I had spent a long time making excuses for the distance, telling myself that she was busy, that life was complicated, that children grew up and had their own lives, and this was natural and right. And all of that was true. Children do grow up. Lives are complicated. I had never wanted to be a burden. I had always said, go, live. You don't need to put your life on hold for me. But there is a difference between having a life and being unreachable when your mother is on the floor of a hallway with a broken hip. There is a difference between independence and absence, and I had spent so long telling myself that I didn't know the difference that I had started to believe it. I thought about Sophie on the bus. 16 years old, with her coat buttoned wrong, and her messy braid, and her bag of salted almonds. Coming because it hadn't occurred to her not to come. I picked up my phone, and I called my attorney. Harold Henderson had been our family lawyer for 22 years. He had handled Raymond's estate when he passed. He had a dry sense of humor, and a framed cross-stitch on his wall behind his desk that read, in small, careful stitches, "The road to hell is paved with verbal agreements." He had done it himself. He had told me this once, with complete seriousness, and I had loved him for it ever since. His assistant told me he could see me Thursday. I went on Thursday. Donna drove me. I sat across from Harold and his cross-stitch, and I told him what I wanted. He listened without interruption, which was one of the things I appreciated most about him. He made notes on his legal pad. When I was finished, he looked at his notes for a moment, and then he looked at me. "You're certain?" he said. "I am. This will change things significantly with Claire." "Yes," I said. "It will." He nodded once. "All right, I'll have the documents ready by Monday." I had the will changed. I removed Claire from it entirely. I divided everything, the savings, the small investment account Raymond and I had built carefully over 30 years between Sophie and Raymond's nephew in Colorado, a good man named Dale, who had driven 8 hours to attend Raymond's funeral and cried openly and unashamedly at the graveside. And then I called a realtor. I had thought about this more carefully than Claire might have imagined I was capable of thinking. I had sat in my armchair for several evenings with a yellow legal pad, and I had written things down and crossed them out and written them again. I had done the math more than once. The house was worth a considerable amount more than it had been when Raymond and I had bought it. The neighborhood had changed over the years, the rough edges sanded smooth by time and rising property values. If I sold it, and if I was careful, I could buy something small and paid off outright, something with no stairs. Something in a town 2 hours north, near the community college where Sophie was planning to study next fall. I called the realtor on a Friday morning. Her name was Janet, and she had a business-like manner that I appreciated. She came the next day, walked through the house with a clipboard and an appraising eye, and gave me a number that was higher than I had expected. "How quickly do you want to move?" she asked. "As quickly as possible," I said. She looked at me for a moment, as though she was trying to determine whether I was serious. Then she wrote something on her clipboard. I'll list it Monday, she said. I did not tell Claire. I want to be clear about why, because I have thought about it and I understand that some people will say it was cruel, and I want to be honest about my reasoning. I didn't tell her because there was nothing to discuss. The house was mine. Raymond and I had paid for it with 30 years of 2 teaching salaries and careful spending and delayed gratifications. We had painted it and repaired it and planted the roses along the back fence. It was ours, and then it was mine, and I had the right to decide what happened to it. I also didn't tell her because I knew exactly what she would say. She would say she was worried about me. She would say I was acting rashly, that I was emotional, that I should wait and think it over, that this was a big decision and I hadn't consulted anyone. She would say the market. She would say the family. She would say, "Mom, come on." And I was tired of conversations that were actually negotiations. I was tired of being managed. The house had 2 offers by Wednesday. I accepted the one that could close in 30 days. I spent those 30 days going through 31 years of a life. It is a strange and clarifying process. You hold things in your hands and you ask yourself, is this mine or is this a habit? Is this something I love or something I kept because getting rid of it required a decision? I donated more than I had expected to donate. I was ruthless with myself in a way that felt good, like finally cleaning out a wound. Sophie came on a Saturday and helped me pack. She was efficient and cheerful and she didn't ask questions, she just worked. We packed boxes and labeled them and stacked them in the front room. And in the late afternoon we took a break and sat on the back porch with glasses of iced tea and looked at Raymond's rose bushes, which were past their season now but still showed a few last, stubborn blooms at the tips of their branches. "Grammy," Sophie said, "are you going to be okay?" I looked at the roses for a while before I answered. "Yes," I said. "I think I really am." She nodded, as though this was the answer she had expected, and we finished our tea in a comfortable silence. Claire found out on a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks after I had signed the listing agreement. She called me, and her voice had an edge to it that I recognized the particular sharp quality it got when she had discovered something and was trying to appear calm. "Mom, I drove by the house today." A pause. "There's a sold sign in the yard." "Yes," I said. "You sold the house." I did. The silence that followed lasted long enough that I counted 7 seconds in my head. "When were you going to tell me?" "I'm telling you now." "Mom." Her voice broke on the word in a way that might have been grief or might have been anger, and I was no longer sure, after all these years, that I could reliably tell the difference. "This is I don't understand. Where are you going to go? Why didn't you talk to me about this? This is the family house. This is where I grew up. It's where I grew up too," I said quietly. "For the last 31 years, it's where I grew up. And it's my house, Claire. But you could have talked to me." "I did try to talk to you," I said. "When I was on the floor of the hallway with a broken hip, I called you first." Another silence, a different kind. "That's not fair," she said, and her voice was smaller now. "We've talked about this." I explained. "I know you explained. And I understood. I do understand. You have a life. You have Patrick and your trips and your plans, and I have never wanted to get in the way of any of that. But Claire..." I stopped. I looked out the window at the backyard, at the rose bushes, at the light coming through the trees in the late afternoon way it did in October. I had surgery. I was alone for 8 days. Sophie took 2 buses to come sit with me, and when you arrived, the first substantial conversation we had was about the house, about what would happen to it. So yes, I sold it. I could hear her breathing. "Where are you going?" she finally asked. "Millbrook," I said. "There's a small house I'm looking at, near the college Sophie is starting in the fall." She didn't say anything for a long moment. When she spoke again, some of the edge had gone from her voice, replaced by something that I chose to believe was genuine, even if it had arrived late. "Are you, Mom? Are you happy? Is this what you actually want?" I thought about that. I thought about the house in Millbrook, which I had driven up to see with Donna on a Tuesday morning, small, single-story, with a porch that faced east and a yard that was just the right amount of yard and stairs that were, I had carefully confirmed, 2 steps up from the driveway and nothing more. I thought about the cross-stitch on Harold's wall and the documents I had signed with steady hands. I thought about Sophie on the bus with her coat buttoned wrong, coming because it hadn't occurred to her not to come. Yes, I said. It's what I want. The closing was on a gray November morning. I signed my name in the places Janet showed me and shook hands with the young couple who were buying it. A couple in their 30s with a baby and plans, and the particular hopeful energy of people who have just found the place where they intend to build their life. They were good people. I could see it. I was glad for them. I walked through the house one last time after they left. Just myself. I stood in the kitchen and looked at the yellow tiles and thought about Raymond picking them out from the sample cards the contractor had spread on the counter, holding them up to the light, perfectly serious about this decision that seemed small at the time. I stood in the hallway at the bottom of the stairs and looked at the second step from the bottom, the one with the lip that had always been there. I stood in the doorway of the room that had been Claire's when she was growing up, which had been a sewing room for the last 20 years, and I thought about the girl she had been when she was small, before the distance, before whatever it is that happens to people and to the spaces between them. I did not cry. I wasn't sad, or I was sad. But it was the clean kind of sadness. The kind that tells you that something mattered, not the kind that asks you to stay. I turned off the lights in every room. I locked the front door. I dropped the key in Janet's lockbox, and I walked to where Donna was waiting, with her car running and the heat on. "Ready?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She drove. The house got smaller in the passenger mirror, and then it was gone around a corner, and I turned back to face forward. The cottage in Millbrook had a porch that faced east. On my first morning there, I made coffee in a kitchen I was still learning the logic of, and I carried it out to the porch, and I sat in one of the 2 chairs I had put there, and I watched the sun come up over the tree line at the end of the road. It was pale and cold and very clean, the way November mornings are when the air hasn't been breathed yet. Sophie had texted me the night before, just, "Can't believe you're going to be 45 minutes away. Literally, cannot wait," with approximately 7 heart emojis that I had not entirely understood, but had understood perfectly. I held my coffee in both hands. The cold air smelled like pine and wet leaves, and the particular clean nothing of a place that has not yet become familiar, that is still in the process of becoming yours. I thought about what I would tell someone, if they asked me how it had come to this. How a Tuesday morning with a laundry basket had become the thing that finally made everything clear. I would tell them that clarity doesn't usually arrive in dramatic moments. It doesn't come in the middle of an argument or a confrontation. It comes quietly, in a hospital bed, while you're looking at a pale blue curtain with a room number written on it in black marker, while your daughter is watching a sunset off the coast of some island or another that she will remember for the rest of her life. You cannot make someone choose you. You cannot bargain for it or earn it or wait long enough for it. Either you are someone's first call or you are not. Either they get on the bus with their coat buttoned wrong or they don't. And when you are 68 years old and you finally allow yourself to see the difference clearly, without the kindly blur of excuse-making, the only question left is what you are going to do about it. I had stopped waiting for someone to tell me I was worth showing up for. I had shown up for myself instead. The sun cleared the tree line fully. The light changed. My coffee was going cold and I drank the rest of it and sat there a little longer anyway, because there was nowhere I needed to be and no one I was waiting for, and the morning was mine, all of it, and I was, in the specific and unfamiliar way that takes some getting used to, entirely free. I used to think that being needed was the same as being loved. I spent a long time trying to make myself indispensable, the house, the inheritance, the things people would want after I was gone, as though love were something you had to arrange in advance, like collateral. As though if you gave people enough reason to stay, they would. Raymond used to say, "Give because you want to give, not because you're afraid of what happens if you don't." He said it about money, and about time, and about the rose bushes he planted along the back fence in a summer when his knees already ached, because he wanted to give the yard something beautiful with no guarantee that it would survive. The roses survived 30 years. I thought about that on my east-facing porch, in the cold November light, in a house that was already beginning, slowly and quietly, to feel like mine.